Season 1 of The Nevers is looking to be one of the greatest science fiction shows that HBO has ever released, and after the launch of its pilot episode just a few days ago, it appears as if fans are already theorizing about what we can come to expect from the franchise as a whole. Some of these speculations are pretty insane, but what do we really know about where the plot of The Nevers is planning on heading, and who should we be keeping our eyes on in the days to come? Well, whether you're a fan of these super-powered Victorians, or just want to know more about the HBO series that everyone is talking about, you've come to the right place, as we're about to explore some Easter eggs and speculations from the pilot episode of The Nevers. So, strap yourselves in and prepare for an adventure, as things are about to get interesting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications turned on, so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. The production of The Nevers. For those of you who haven't decided to give The Nevers a chance, allow us to tantalize your taste buds, before diving right into the spoiler-heavy content that the majority of viewers have been waiting for. At its very basis, The Nevers is an American science fiction drama that was created for HBO by the infamous Joss Whedon, who has been in the news for quite a few months now. To catch up those of you who aren't incredibly interested in the real drama surrounding the filming industry, Joss Whedon has been accused by a number of actors for being a pretty horrible person to work for. He is also the director that was brought on to finish Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, which he changed drastically, robbing it of the tone and theme Snyder was originally going for. Because of everything that has been going on in his life, Whedon decided to step down from The Nevers as a show, but since the series was created by him, its writing mostly encapsulates the true Whedon experience, which, like Firefly and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, is satisfying to say the least. The overarching storyline of The Nevers. In general, The Nevers is a story about a group of people living in Victorian London, who, after gaining supernatural abilities 3 years prior to the start of the show, have found themselves at odds with the rest of the world. The Touched, as they've been come to call themselves, are mostly made up of women, and are led by the one and only Amalia True, who is portrayed by the beautiful Laura Donnelly. Like Professor Xavier in the Marvel comic-verse, Amalia runs an orphanage where those with superhuman abilities take refuge. People often fear what they don't understand after all, which is precisely why the Touched have hidden themselves and their abilities over the last few years. Remember, the series takes place during the Victorian era, where mention of superhuman abilities and excessive emotion was usually followed by calls of witchcraft. It's thus at the orphanage where we find a large number of the Touched spending their lives together. While some, like leader Amalia, are able to see the future in small increments, others are incredibly tall, or able to communicate and see the world in a multitude of supernatural ways. In other words, it is essentially a story about discrimination, where those who don't have or understand these new powers find themselves standing against those who do. Another smart way in which Whedon brings about this differentiation in his creation is the reference of the group as the Touched, which is often the label that was placed on the insane back in the day. If someone was said to be crazy, many referred to them as being touched, which immediately brings up the comparison between those with powers and those who are mentally deficient, something that we are clearly going to explore as the series carries on. When discussing the title of the show before leaving due to personal reasons, Whedon said the following regarding what it actually means. It's a phrase that meant to evoke a sort of reaction to their oddity, to what is considered unnatural. The idea that you should never be like this, you should never have existed, something is not the way it should be, and you don't have the right to have whatever weird power or ability you have. But to me, it's one of those things where you take something negative and you wear it as a badge of honor. And we see this concept come out for the first time in the pilot episode of the show, where Amalia makes it clear that she doesn't believe the Touched are afflicted by anything. We also hear from the trailer that this group of Touched misfits have a purpose in the world, and are actually a part of something much bigger. What could that bigger purpose be? Well, let's take a look at the pilot episode and make some conclusions for ourselves. The breakdown of the pilot episode. The pilot episode starts off by referring to the mysterious event that took place in London back on the 3rd of August, 1896. which had the effect of turning a group of ordinary citizens into superhumans, each with their own unique abilities and talents. What specifically happened on that day, and why these seemingly random people were given the abilities they have, we have no idea. But there's no doubting the fact that there was some reason behind the event that took place. We then pick up with a member of this group, Amalia True, who just so happens to run St. Romuald's orphanage, which is a safe haven for those who find themselves with special abilities. In other words, it's a recreation of Charles Xavier's school school for gifted youngsters, just in a universe of its own creation. Alongside Amalia is her best friend and ingenious inventor, Miss Penance Adair, who is expertly played by the one and only Anne Skelly. Adair has the ability to perceive energy, which clearly fuels her incredible designs and allows her to create some of the greatest inventions of the Victorian era. While off to see a girl whose family believes she has been possessed by a demon, the pair also discuss a killer named Malady, who has to date killed 5 male psychoanalysts. After rescuing Malady from her chains and defeating some peculiar-looking creatures that appeared to be after her, the trio make their way back to the orphanage. We are at the same time shown snippets of a government council meeting, where discussions regarding the Touched are in effect. You see, some believe they have been given powers as part of an attack by an unknown entity. After enlisting the help of the Beggar King, as played by Nick Frost, True lets slip that the face he is threatening to cut is not actually hers, which definitely caused us to raise our eyebrows in confusion. After an insane fight, we also see a flashback of a ship that caused the mysterious event alluded to, dropping small orbs of light that settled on the Touched and caused them to develop powers. The only one who seems to remember this craft is Malady, who before being affected was on her way to the asylum. We also see that True, after being affected by the substance, regained her will to live, saving herself from her own suicidal attempt. And then, last but not least, we're introduced to Dennis O'Hare's character, who appears to be a sadistic doctor hell-bent on discovering the special abilities of the Touched by drilling into their skulls. But what could this all mean for the continuation of the franchise? The ship that brought about the event. The massive twist shown at the end of the episode had to do with the actual event which spawned the powers and abilities that the Touched have, which was surprisingly not the result of evolution, as our previous comparisons to the X-Men might have suggested. Instead, we see a glowing spaceship making its way across the sky and spreading a glittering substance that affects those of the Touched, while leaving other citizens as ordinary as they were before the event. Funnily enough, the spaceship in question looks pretty familiar to Serenity, which is straight out of another one of Whedon's properties, known as Firefly. This definitely alludes to the fact that someone, or something, wanted the Touched to get the powers that they currently have, so the Council might have actually been onto something after all, with the Touched unknowingly being a part of something bigger, like an attack that is set to take place in the days to come. This is especially true if aliens were the ones that gave the Touched their impressive powers, but we don't think that Whedon was going in that direction of aliens, as that seems a bit too much on the nose for our liking. What is a lot more likely is that the ship in question was commissioned from the future, and thus contains a team of time travelers who gave the Touched powers in an attempt to save the world from something that is due to take place in the future. The pilot episode did concentrate pretty heavily on its steampunk aesthetic that is brought on by Penance, and as lovers of the steampunk genre will tell you, time travel is a theme that is often tackled by the various titles that consider themselves to be steampunk-esque. The attack of organized religion. Referring to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we can also see that Whedon has a pretty big love for religious imagery and philosophical discussions regarding the truth of similar claims. And since there are a few references to organized religion in the Nevers, the possibility exists that the show will be tackling similar aspects when it comes to the continuation of the show. The demon spawn that chased after Malady and the thought that she had been possessed by something demonic also hint at the fact that the church may view the Touched as an ungodly group who thus need to be removed, similar to how witches were. The woman in the wheelchair. Last but not least, one of the biggest speculations to date regarding the franchise of the Nevers has to do with the role taken on by Olivia Williams, who brings the eccentric Lavinia Bidlow to life. Since Lavinia is the wealthy benefactor of the orphanage that Amalia runs, we're led to believe that she is one of the Touched, but the way that she treats her brother really has us wondering as to whether she's actually a good person or not. And since she's bound to a wheelchair because of an accident that befell her quite some time ago, she doesn't seem like much of a threat. This is, however, why fans of the show have been eyeing her with suspicion. What if she isn't actually paralyzed and has a bigger role to play when it comes to the overall mission of the Touched? What do you think? Let us know in the comments section below.